Hi, everybody. So my guest today has become one of my favorite people. He's one of my personal healing helpers. I have many on the unseen side, and I have many on this side of, the veil. And he and I met a year ago, and I started doing work with him. And the work that he does, I'm just letting y'all know, is phenomenal. My personal experience working with this man has shifted and changed and supported me throughout a year that for me personally was all about my inner healing. So I want to welcome Scott Clover. Thanks for joining me, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
So when we met last year, you had been recommended to me by another acquaintance, Tiffany Barnes. And so we chatted, and I thought, well, I should do a session with you. You suggested do a session with me so you know what I do. And then I had you on the show. So for everybody that didn't hear that show, I suggest you go to it. It was about this time last year in 2021. Go to it and listen to a lot more of what Scott does and his explanation, because Scott's a somatic healer, an energy healer, and so much more. Is there any other adjective you want to add to that list?
Well, I use my intuition. So it's not just pecking at straws or guessing where the root of your issue is. I have a facility, or I have a way about the way I see energy, especially in people's bodies or people's energy fields, that I can really see where some of the roots either are embedded in the body or embedded in your story. Because a lot of people in their midlife have told themselves the same story so many times to try and make themselves feel better from the age of 7 that it doesn't really resemble that story anymore. So it's harder to heal it. So you come and see somebody like me who has an intuitive sense about them, and then I can be guided to the root of an issue. And it's a lot easier to heal the whole issue if you start at the root, as opposed to superficially going down. Think of it as trying to kill a weed from the top, but you don't kill the root. So what I do with my intuition is I push the root up from below, and it gets exposed or it gets seen. And as we know in quantum physics, when the universe is observed, it changes. Mm-hmm. So if you have somebody like me guiding you through your subconscious, or guiding you through your childhood to say, oh, what happened at 7? A lot of times I'll notice when it happened yesterday. I said, oh, did you move when you were 7? Did you change houses? Or when people change schools, or if they lost a friend or their friendship circles changed in middle school, for example. These have an effect that ripples out over your lifetime and can change the relationships you have, or can affect the relationships you have with your adult partners, your adult friends, because you're still trying to placate that wounded or hurt child that may have gone through something. And so the story gets overlaid, and to the point that you don't recognize it anymore. So observation, I say in my work, is about 55% of the healing. Once you observe the pattern realistically for what it is, as I call it, accepting existing realities. A lot of us were betrayed by people we cared about, family members, extended family members, something like that. And if we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, then that betrayal is always going to sit inside of us, right? And so if you express to yourself, oh, I was hurt by this action, then you have a better chance of resolving it in your own body, your own story. And sometimes, as they say, your biology is your biography. So these stories can get locked in the body, or these emotional codes, or these emotional coagulations, as I see them, can get locked in the body. And over years or decades, that can become a physical ailment.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened to me. As you know, some of it is, I became a type 1 diabetic at age 32 and almost died in the process of that, because no doctor could kind of see I was beyond the juvenile diabetes age. I was, the anomaly, right? Like I always like to be. So, but it was the process of becoming diabetic was definitely had a different root, you know, and
Yes.
not even what people want to tell me is the root of, you know, like being joyless. And so you need to find the sweetness. And I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that shit. So for me, getting to the root is the thing that I love most about working with you, Scott, because I don't have to run a story with you. You just go right in and you find, you're like, oh, here, you ask me 1 or 2 questions and we together are able to yank that out or transmute it, or you give me exercises to help me release it. And then I go on with my life and I'm better. It's almost like, I want to say, it's almost like you're like the Roto-Rooter guy, you know, you can't, when we work together, you find the 1 or 2 things that have been hiding from me.
Yes.
That I've been looking at to try, because I always do my inner work. I always am like investigating and letting go of old belief systems, letting go of ancestral paradigms that have been downloaded into my body. And I'm saying that out loud, everybody, because we all have some ancestral lineage and generational stuff that gets passed down that we have or are given, and we don't even know we're fighting through that too.
Correct. And that can be a thought processes that your great-great-grandmother or grandfather had. It could be a trauma that one of them went through. It could be a vexing or a curse or the evil eye, depending on where your ancestors are from. There's certain parts of the world that I ask my clients, where are your people from? And if they come from certain parts of the world, there's generally some residual negative energies that get passed down through the lineage. Yeah. And this is a different lineage than your soul lineage, which is like reincarnation. This is genetic, passed down through memories and blood from grandfather to grandson, etc. So all those things can factor in.
So Scott, because you said it's different from the soul, it's the genetic thing.
Well, I want to be clear. It's people throw around genetics too easily as an excuse for why people are sick. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, it gets passed down from the family line, right? A lot of genes need to be turned on or expressed. Just because a grandmother has breast cancer and a mother has breast cancer and the daughter gets it, that's not necessarily genetics as much as it is a vibrational transference or a mimicry of an anomaly or a sense of a lack of feeling safe. And if you don't feel safe, or you get your heart broken in your heart chakra, or you don't feel supported because you're a mother and you overgave, then you see all these cases of breast cancer. So yes, it can be a depleted energy. It's almost like the pool or the bowl was empty too long. Mm-hmm. Right? If we don't replenish ourselves by overgiving, if we're an overgiver, and a lot of people listening to this are probably overgivers, if we don't take the time to replenish ourselves and take advantage of what we offer to other people, to our own self, then you're going to have some sort of depletion, or you're going to be off balance.
Yeah.
So if you give 70% and only receive 15, that's going to take its toll very quickly. And over time, it really builds up.
You guys, he's talking about me. He's talking about me. So, and we know he's talking about me.
Well, no, you're not special in this instance. This is very common. It's very common for people to just, mothers especially, to overgive. It's just part of what we were trained to do. Mm-hmm. And then women from specific cultures also are trained to be submissive, and they may not be told verbally to be submissive, but it's in the culture. Mm-hmm. And if you come from one of those cultures, then I sense it almost immediately. And I say, okay, you're an Italian female. And because of that, that means these things have happened to you or in your surroundings, right? If you were raised in a Jewish family, has a different vibration to it than if you were raised Methodist or agnostic.
Right.
Ideologies, dogma gets passed down, and then we have to metabolize it And some people don't metabolize it as an outside force. They actually try to make it their own. And in doing so, then you have an issue because it's not your issue. But if you adopt it, then you're going to, if you adopt that issue, then it's your responsibility to let go of it.
And that's been my daily do.
Okay.
So last year, when I was doing my inner work, I've shared this before on my show. I came to a point of, again, having this low self-esteem, this feeling devalued, unlovable or unworthy of receiving or whatever. And I had heard this before in my intuition that I've been in therapy, the therapist is like, what happened to you that you don't have any self-esteem? Nothing really happened to me as a small child that I could say, oh, it's when, whatever. But this last year, what I saw is it was a generational passing down on the feminine side of my family. And then I later saw on the masculine side of my family that for whatever reason, and I went back as far as I could, like several generations to find out where the initiating cause was for the women, at least, to feel worthless. And it actually went back centuries.
Well, less than worthless is really quite dramatic.
Yes, but there were women that were simply chattel.
Oh, correct. Treated worthlessly.
They weren't
correct.
less than, at least in my lineage.
Yeah, I get that.
On the masculine side, there was less than, because the masculine side was the one that was the more important side in all those years.
Right. And going back to something you brought up earlier is one of the things that I've noticed, especially since the lockdown started a few years ago, is people either having the ability to look inside themselves and try to excise some of their stories or regulate or metabolize some of them that weren't understandable. But what I realized is, once again, going back to my intuition, I have a tendency to find parts of your subconscious that have what I call an invisibility cloak around them.
Yeah.
It's almost like I see a 7 or 8 year old in your psyche that is, looks a little homeless. It's dirty. Its face is like, it's Oliver Twist kind of thing. And they're wearing actually an invisible cloak because the whole point of keeping that story going is to protect them. And it's to protect that 7-year-old psyche. Well, now you're 47 years old or you're 38 years old. You don't need that 7-year-old protecting itself. But if you can't see it, if you look around and don't see it because it's obfuscating itself, it's hiding because it doesn't want to be accepted or brought back into the fold. That's when I have a tendency to help clients see part of where they've covered up or cloaked their childhood psyche for protection, but in the long run, it's not protecting them anymore. It's causing, major issues through their relationships or their work life or their home life because they're still scared or they're still afraid somewhere deep down in their psyche. And I have a way of seeing that and then presenting that scared child in their psyche. And as we observe it, it very much or very often can grow up as we perceive it. It can start at a 7-year-old. By the time the session's over, it's in its teenage years.
I so love that you're able to support people in that, because that's really having done this on my own for a lot of times. It's so much easier to have a support system like you, Scott, to guide through what the steps are. And then it's not as painful or as scary because there's somebody there with you helping.
Correct. And since I'm the one perceiving it originally, you can experience it gradually. It doesn't have to be such an affront to your system, because a lot of times when people are affronted with it, that's when they react, or, the word is triggered, things like that.
Yeah.
So we come at it somewhat gracefully, with compassion, with curiosity, not with judgment.
Which is a hard thing to do when you're the one that's got the shit inside going, wanting to come out,
Well, yeah, who wants to look at their own
stuff.
frailties? We're trained not to do that. We're trained not to accept our own frailties. Well, accepting them changes them. Accepting them lets them out, lets them breathe, lets them grow. Because right now,
Yes.
a lot of adults are walking around with scared aspects, not all of their aspects of their personality, but there's certain aspects of most adults' personalities that still have a childish fear or a childish destabilizing energy, or they don't feel safe, especially if you come from a household of trauma or abuse or alcoholism, things like that, once again, those patterns then get heightened. And a lot of times when you grow up in a household where you're pretending to be okay, or you're pretending to be somebody to protect you against the perpetrator or the person that's causing harm in the household, you grow up and then you forget what your nervous system is actually supposed to feel like.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I go in, as I help people understand where their nervous system is excitable, where they're feeling over electric or under electric, whether it's in their auric field that isn't supporting them, or their chakra system, their energy fields inside their bodies. A lot of people growing up with those instances that I referred to have an issue with their own nervous system as an adult, because they weren't sure what it was supposed to feel like as a child. So they have no baseline. That's where the somatics that I do comes in, is we understand, and there's certain technologies we can use to get you to feel inside your own body more safely, or understandably, with less judgment. So these things can come to the surface to be observed. And once they're observed, they can be healed.
Yeah.
But if they're not observed, you're going to have a hard time healing it.
And then whatever else you're ignoring is going to multiply and join
Yep.
with, and then you've got a bigger dealy do than if you had just looked at it.
Right. And a lot of times for people, it's combined with grief, which lands in the lungs, which causes either breathing issues or lack of chi. So a lot of people hold grief in their lungs, and we can grieve things that aren't good for us. You're grieving your ex-husband, or you're grieving your ex-partner, or you're grieving your business partner who was terrible for you. But yet we have to grieve it, because that's how our emotional system is set up. So if you can grieve it and let it go, as opposed to letting it stick, as I say, grief is a sticky grief is a sticky mistress.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't grieve things, they get stuck, and we don't think to grieve them because we didn't want them in the first place.
Because who wants to experience a loss of any kind?
Correct. So if we ignore that loss, or just say, oh, it didn't bother me, well, deep down or somewhere in your respiratory system, there's a little bit of grief, and that causes a chi imbalance. So there's certain exercises you can do, that we can do, to clear that grief out of the lungs. And once we do them, people miraculously, they just go, oh, my lungs expanded. Like they feel they get a quarter or third more capacity just in their breathing, just by letting go some of that cantankerous or held on energy.
Yeah. So Scott, in your work that you did over the last year during a lockdown, pandemic, open and closed situation around the world, did you find lots of people experiencing grief? What was like some of the main emotions that individuals were getting stuck in?
Right. Seeing who they truly are. Taking a moment, going inside. When you were stuck in our houses for 6 months, I mean, a lot of us never left the house for 6 months at a time.
Yeah.
You're your own roommate at that point. So the socialization wasn't there. So you had to sit with yourself. And a lot of people started saying, wow, there's things about me that I would really like to change or to shift out of. And a lot of that stuff has to do with self-worth, self-esteem. The healing energy in the quantum realm is linked to self-esteem. If you feel worthy and your body's worthy, then your body will heal itself. So self-esteem and healing energy are almost synonymous to me.
Yeah. And it strikes me in the work that I do that a majority of the people that come to me or come to you, it strikes me as a majority of them have an esteem issue of some kind.
Well, my clients range through several different takes. The creativity is one. So sometimes if you want to express yourself creatively, your self-esteem takes a hit. So
Mhm.
it's not just about overcoming traumas and things like that. It's about self-expression, feeling comfortable with who you are in your own body. And then you're able to talk about things going on in your life. Which leads me to intuition. A lot of us, I had major issues talking about my intuition growing up, to the point that I just never did.
Mhm.
And now it's on my business card. So I have to sort of let people know about it. That's why, that sets me apart from different types of therapy. But if accepting people's intuition, this is another thing I've noticed over the last year and a half, is people are coming into their own and there's no one to talk about it.
Right.
And so that first chakra is still, what do we do? Where do we go? What do we attach to? Right? If you're feeling or sensing energies, or you want to help somebody, or your empathy is off the charts, then you want to talk to somebody about it. But sometimes a lot of us are really self-conscious about talking about intuition.
It's
So,
interesting. I just had lunch last week or the week before with this couple, and the spouse was wanting to talk about energy and metaphysical things, and I'm like, yeah, let's do a course that and toward the end of the evening he goes, I don't know anybody else I can talk to about this stuff. And I'm thinking, who are you hanging out with? Because
it's more common than it's not. I get a lot of male clients who, it's almost like a breath of fresh air for them, because
thank God you're
it's not
working with that.
accepted to talk to them.
Yeah.
Plumbers and electricians call me and say, I feel shit. I feel stuff. I know what's going to happen, or I know when my wife's in a bad mood and there's something inside my body that I can't express it. So I deal with a lot of people like that, trying to come in tune to themselves and in tune to their intuition. And a lot of times it's the same thing. I know it was personally in my case.
The same thing how? What do you mean?
Well, I had shrinks growing up, and I'd say, I dream the future, or sometimes something happens and it's all about my intuition. And they say, oh, we don't want to talk about that, or let's deal with that another time.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I was over feeling and over sensing, and I tried to express it and I was shut down. So that's something I help people with, the over perceivers, people who have big satellite dishes and not big buildings to put them on. So try to get people grounded in their body, then their intuition can not flourish per se, but be accepted, and be utilized. If you overfeel, you're picking up way too information and you can't metabolize it. You can't get a handle on it.
And that's been some of the work you've done with me this last year is
Yeah.
Because my intuitive has expanded and grown, and I'm picking up a whole bunch of other sensory stuff, dimensional stuff. And then I'm not aware, like I said before we came on, and I'm not aware. I know that the body's still here and part of me is in the body, but where else am I? And how do I call those pieces back?
Right. And where's the discernment for what you're picking up?
Right. Is it mine?
Correct.
And
should you be feeling, just because you can, should you be?
It's a good question.
Big part of being psychic is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
And I got chills on that right there.
Yeah, I learned that once a week. I learned that once a week. Because a lot of us know stuff about people that we don't intend to put our foot in our mouth. We're trying to help. They may have never said anything to us, but somehow we know what part of their story is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when my clients come to me and they want to tell me their story for 15 minutes, like I'm a shrink, I say, no. Just think about what your issue is. And then I can sense where in the body it's pinging, or it sort of darkens or gets lighter. Mm-hmm. For me. It either lights up or gets really dense and shadowy. So then I'm drawn to that part of the body, or I'm drawn to that part of your story.
I appreciate that you said that, because a lot of my clients want to do the same thing. That it's almost like they don't talk to anybody. I'm like, really? Did you need to tell me all that? Because let's just get down to the job.
Well, because that's the society we're in, is it has to be expressed. Yeah, well, you're expressing a story that's been maligned over 30 years. So I don't want to hear it. I'm not being rude. It's just not going to do our work any good. And if you talk to me for 15 minutes, that's 14 minutes we could have been doing energy work.
Right.
But people, they get really excited and they feel like they're compelled to tell you their story. And I completely get it. But the minute you start it, I can see where the body's already pinging. Mm-hmm. So I don't need the denouement of the story or the climax of the story, because I already see where your body's being affected by it.
So Scott, could you share, without names or anything, one client experience where the individual came in and there was so much pinging and hooks and barbs and, like what was like the worst case scenario you had to work through with someone?
So the worst case would be, once again, a judgment. If you have an entity attached to your emotional psyche, that's bad for you. But I can't
Why?
make a gradation between one person's and another person's. I can tell you that in the last couple of years, I've noticed a lot of people's, similar to that cloaked part of their psyche, there's old thought patterns that get stuck in their either their body or their brain or their system, and those thought patterns almost become like entities.
Oh,
And then
wow.
they have to be asked to be removed because they take on a mind of their own. Now, this isn't a ghost. This isn't a full-fledged thinking thing. This is just a rudimentary thought pattern that almost turns into something parasitic in the system. A
Parasitic
lot
is a
of,
good word.
yeah, it attaches to the spine, or it attaches to the liver, or it attaches to the
Mhm,
spleen, and I sense where
mhm.
these are, and then we have a talk with it. The client has a talk with it, asks it to leave. They generally have names. Some have bosses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting work. But the
Interesting.
catharsis is exceptional when people release it, because they feel it and they sense it themselves. I'm only there to guide them through the explanation. They're doing the work and they're asking it to leave, and it leaves. They sense it on their own right, and it's really miraculous.
Mhm,
People are getting tired of sitting with their maligned energy.
mhm.
A lot of people don't know how to ask for help.
Well, and that's why they just sit with that energy and walk
Yes.
around with it and don't even know. It's like walking around having your back out, and you don't know that you're walking hunched over until the spine gets realigned somehow, and then you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was a hunchback for so long.
Right. I sense them as almost energetic goiters,
Oh, wow.
like, or eels that attach to different parts
Mhm,
of the body.
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
we've done that work. You've done
Yes.
that work with me because I had so much stuff going on, and and for me, I think I was that person that had those old thought patterns that were becoming
Mhm.
entity like. They were getting so, I was giving them so much attention without realizing it, that they were kind of taking over my entire system at one point.
Right. A lot of times they're like windows running in the background of your computer, taking up data space or taking up Wi-Fi space or however that works. But you don't see it on the screen. It's behind, it's cached, it's hidden behind it, but it's still running in the background. So that's one of the things I like about my work, is I help people with that catharsis to get rid of these energy patterns that are succubi, that are sort of parasitical.
Mhm.
And then once they do that, the term I've been using lately is spiritual malaise. They
Yes.
feel their spiritual malaise lifting off of them, or they feel that heavy blanket of maybe depression or not feeling safe in their own self. That lifts, and once that lifts, as I said, that self-esteem injects itself in, and then you have a real healing opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like it's almost like some of us, I'm raising my hand. Sometimes we don't even realize we've thrown that blanket, that cloak over us, and we're suffocating that esteem that's there all the time. It's not like it doesn't leave and go somewhere else. We're just closing it off for some reason.
Correct. Well, say you get divorced in your 20s or 30s, and now you're happily remarried. Just because you're happily remarried doesn't take the trauma away from the divorce. And so uncoiling from that ideology, uncoiling from the individual themselves, the ex partner, if you will, that's a real cornerstone of my work, is helping people detach from things, processes, or people that are vexing their system or causing them harm. Once I wrote a couple of weeks ago that detachment is connection. And I know that
Wait,
sounds
say that again. Say that again.
detachment is connection.
Okay.
And I know that sounds oxymoronic, but what I mean is, when you detach from these stories or these betrayals or
Uh,
these ex-partners, once that detachment is experienced by you, then you have a real opportunity to connect with yourself. But if you're connecting to all these old stories or all these old people that have betrayed you, you still have some energetic tendril, as I see them, connected to them, then you're feeling depleted and you're not even knowing why. And if we release those tendrils or bring them back into your body, then you have a more sense of detaching from what's causing you harm, and you have an opportunity to connect with your own self somatically, energetically, intuitively.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I do this all the time. I'm really trying to turn it off, Scott. I really am. But I'll get up in the morning and I'm starting fresh, right? I'm not going to think about that ex. And then something will happen, not even something happens, all of a sudden, then I'm like, well, you know, and my mind starts going, and I'm like, that's it, stop. So are those thought patterns that kind of regenerate sometimes, are those red flags that I'm hooked again with him, by him, or is it sending out?
It's interesting. When you talk about it, you kept moving your hands here. When you just talked about that, this part of the back of your neck like lit up to me.
Yeah.
And it just sends energy up and down. Imagine, I say this a lot. Have you ever seen a child that's frustrated and they put their hands in fists and they put them down at the ground?
Oh, yeah.
And they put the kid goes like this and they're frustrated because they can't get the words out. Well, if you do that and then you feel that in the back of your neck there, that's the same sort of similar energy is the frustration. You have to accept that you were frustrated and move on. Wanting to stay frustrated then keeps the story alive.
Oh God. Yes.
And then your body reacts to that story.
Oh, and every time I get a massage, the people go to my neck and they're like, what is going on here? And
I mean, even the minute you brought that story up, I could sense the back of your neck just went,
yeah.
So, which is interesting because we did a session the other day, you and I, and we worked on the back of your throat chakra. So,
yeah. So I'm just curious if that is for people that are listening, if there's a story that they're running, that might be the clue that that's the thing you most need to let go of, or readdress, reobserve.
Correct. Yep.
But not dive into.
Don't rehash it. Rehashing it just digs the groove back in deeper and just gives you another opportunity to not let go of it.
Okay, but see, so you know, sometimes I'm just reacting for everybody that's listening, because sometimes people just want to do that. I've noticed that, you know, like I had a client the other day, like you said, 20 minutes of the story. I'm like, trying to divert, let's move on. And then we did the session and there was a shift. And as soon as the session was over, she picked that story up and took it with her. I'm like, wait, whoa. Because the rehashing is the thing that for some people, they think they're doing work by rehashing it.
Correct. That is not true.
Right.
No, I don't want to share in your pain. I want to help you release it. So don't tell me how bad you feel. I can sense how bad you feel.
Yeah.
The more you tell me how bad you feel, then you get to feel bad one more time.
Right.
So don't tell me how bad you feel. I get it. You came to me for a reason. You came to me to help you feel better. So that's a given.
So Scott, a lot of the work you do is with people that have experienced trauma, whether it's from being with a narcissist or physical and mental abuse from family of origin. And what would you say to those people? What's the one thing, just to give them a reference on what they could do next for themselves?
Oh, embodiment.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing,
embody the trauma.
No, don't embody the trauma. Embody your body. The other thing I would add to that list is bullying.
Oh my God.
Bullying has such a negative effect on people's psyches that they bring it home even in their family. It can taint a whole household because it just really robs the person of their sense of self. So one of the ways I help people start this process is to embody themselves, to feel back into their body. My mentor, when I first met him, I had suffered through talk therapists that just weren't getting it. And I met this man, Dr. Michael Picucci, who had won a National Institute of Health Award for his work in somatics. And he asked me how my body felt. And I didn't want to tell him, "Oh, how dare you ask me that?" Because I didn't want to be in my body. Once I gleaned how important it is, and this was a decade and a half ago or more, it now is one of the major cornerstones of my work, is to help people feel embodied and safe in their own body. A lot of
Safe
that
in your
list that you
body.
made,
Yeah.
a lot of the lists that you listed off means that the person didn't feel safe in their own skin, in their own household. So readjusting that nervous system to an adult harmonic, to a safe harmonic, to a place of self-esteem, that's where healing can become continuous, or it can really have a take on your nervous system to calm it down, and then you approach the world differently.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so by saying embody your body, you've reminded me that that's the thing I got to do, instead of trying to get away from the body I currently own right now.
Well, and you see it through ailments. Oh, my knee hurts. Take a pill so you don't feel it. No, it hurts for a reason. It
Right.
wants to be acknowledged. It wants to be seen. So if you have a physical ailment, put your hands on it. Use your mind's eye. Close your eyes and go into that part of your body and ask it what it's trying to tell you. Don't take a pill to try and mute it, because you're not healing anything at that point. You're just ignoring it or detaching from it in a non-healthy way.
Right. And the body will continue to be in pain until you pay attention.
Correct.
That's
kind
to me, I think that's kind of the root of a lot of disease, is the body trying to get our attention that there's something we're not paying attention to. And it may not be a physical thing. It may just be a belief system thing.
Correct. But our society says, take a pill, you'll feel better. Take a pill to ignore it. Take a pill to sequester it. Put it on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Well, if it stays on the sidelines, it's going to stay there forever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Scott Clover, you are, your gift to me. I don't know if I've told you that enough, but I'm telling you now on air, you're a gift to me. And I really greatly appreciate who you are and your skill set and the compassion that you bring to the work that you do.
Thank you.
And
appreciate that.
The divine intelligence that flows through you, because it's pretty powerful. So
it can be, yes. you and I have had some pretty great experiences, I would say, in the healing milieu.
Yeah. So
I remember a certain Walt Whitman poem coming to mind. Sing the Body Electric.
Oh yeah, the Body Electric. Yeah. I looked that up. Yeah, it was interesting. So if people want to get in touch with you to book a session or find out more about what you do, where do they go?
ScottClover.com. My name is Scott Clover, and that's my website. I also have a podcast on all the platforms. It's called the Intuitive Energy Podcast with Scott Clover. And there I talk about intuition, healing, self-worth, self-esteem, boundaries, a lot of what we talked about today, but I each episode has a different take on how people sense, feel, energy, how they can help heal themselves through understanding their own energetic systems.
I love that.
Check out the website or check out the podcast. I'd appreciate it.
So say the name of the podcast again, Scott.
The Intuitive Energy Podcast.
Energy. Okay. Thank you so much, my friend, and helpmate and healer and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Thanks for taking time today.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So until next time, I'm just going to say, and so it is, namaste.